Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Meet Me in the Middle podcast. I'm Jackson, here with my good buddy Justin.
What's going on, man?
Justin, you had a topic that you and I have had lots of conversations about in the past. We've touched on it, but I don't think we've ever really gone down the rabbit hole like we want to.
And
But
admittedly, we're probably gonna do it more often and more times
mhm,
throughout. It's probably not gonna be the last time we talk about it, or
yeah,
uh,
yeah. The topic is masculinity, right? So let's get it started, Justin.
okay. I think my big question is like, why is it a topic for today, right? Like, why is this a thing right now? And I think some of it's probably brought up by the I think there's a couple different tiers to it, right? I think one, feminism and the empowerment movement was a big thing because it kind of reoriented the sexes and responsibilities and level playing field as far as finances and those kinds of things.
Are you referring to the feminist movement like 60s and 70s or
Like
something
from when
more?
it, yeah, I mean, because if you predate that, right, women couldn't vote. They were mostly, housewives, the career aspect. Some didn't go to college. And then once we had that, it opened up the world to, again, kind of a more equal playing field across the spectrum of going to school, just as informed and intelligent about certain things. They're able to have careers and have, I mean, the dynamic changed. Now, there have been different waves of feminism. So the one that we're in now is drastically, there's like old school feminists who don't even agree with modern feminists at all right now. So, I mean, it's feminism in itself, just like masculinity, I think has different aspects to it based on life and based on the situations we go through. So we've kind of had a lot in that aspect. And then I think another one would be, I think, unfortunately, a lot of the mass shooters and stuff are men. And when we look at the younger guys that do it, I feel like more so it's being turned. It's not being turned into. It's being more addressed as like a man and a boy problem. Like, what? How come this kid didn't have guys around him to help him out, or vice versa, right? What other men influence this kid? Like, what kind of men do we have that are influencing these boys to go one way or the other, or to, like, off the rails, or what track are they even on? And as far as the man's responsibility to keep our boys in line and safe and healthy and that kind of stuff, and what is influencing them, because we're going to talk about the influencers right now, and who do we want influencing our boys, and what do those influences, what are the causes, what are the effects of those influences, and how it applies to life and to women too. And I think those are, and we have more data now too, just in the relationships. And like I think I did around households, relationships, and schooling. It used to, when the family broke down, we didn't talk about it a whole lot, what the absence of a father in the house is, or what single motherhood looks like raising a boy that doesn't have a male figure in their lives, and what happens to that, even as far as predators these days, or predators at any point, right? Predators are more likely to go after kids when there's not a man in the house. Why? Well, it's for the obvious reason. It's a more difficult if there's someone there that's going to give you some adversity to what you want. So I think it's just there's been a lot of different things that have gone after it, and I think it's really cool now that we have different voices than the ones we've been hearing. And but diving into, like, masculine a little bit more again, like, why is it a topic? And I think that one of the main things is going to be the negative aspects to what men and boys have been doing lately, and people asking the question of why is this stuff happening, and how do we get here, and then now that we're here, how do we get out of it, or how do we make it better?
There's a lot to this conversation. There's I think you're talking about influencers and the people that are able to influence young men and boys. I'm seeing more and more there's this red pill effect, this like, you know, wanting to push traditional values, wanting to empower men and like almost like rally against feminism, as if as if straight men lost equity somewhere. I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, but I think that this is like a pendulum swing that wasn't necessary. Like that have like people having equity, there being more equality and more equity for whether it's across genders, across races, across just in general, is not a bad thing. And this there I think that with every movement there's going to be part of it that goes too far. This effect of influencers telling boys that they're being short-sighted, they, you know, they're losing out on something that they're just I just don't agree with it.
Well, do you have something specific as far as like what you don't agree we're losing out on?
So, I mean, one example that I was gonna bring up is the Kevin Samuels effect. Like Myron Gaines is one thing, Andrew Tate's another thing. The first experience that I had that kind of opened me up to why this is so endemic is when I was editing podcast clips for a YouTube channel before, and we never got that much traction with our reels. I mean, and it wasn't for the lack of editing, it wasn't for lack of content, it was just the audience. And we had one clip that got well over 1 million views, and it was surprising to me. But when I started looking into it, it was the guest was a Chicano rapper, but he was quoting Kevin Samuels, and it was a really controversial, talking about men or women choose who they sleep with, but men choose who they marry. And it was this like really, it was a very controversial topic. It was a very controversial quote. I didn't know that it was a Kevin Samuels quote. I knew that it wasn't his original thought, but
It
it
sounds
made me,
like Samuels.
yeah. And it made me realize that, oh, this is the type of shit that, controversy, like sex sells, controversy sells. And this controversy that haven't, right. Negativity is going to get attention on both sides. Like when they, and this is the Fox News effect of everything. This is like there's far ends of the spectrum are going to, like, you say the most ridiculous thing in the world, you're going to have people that agree with you, you're going to have people that disagree, and it's going to cause froth. It's going to cause there to, it's going to get more eyes on it. It's going to get more attention. And I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing, but people, like we were going to talk about, these Myron Gaines and Andrew Tate and Andrew Wilson, they're spewing this, like, just, and I'll use the word toxic masculinity, but it's just, I think that their ideas are in themselves can be quite toxic, and the way that they're using it, the rhetoric that they're using. I think everyone is obviously entitled to their opinion, but when you create controversy and monetize it and use it to boost your own voice, I think that there are vulnerable populations like young men and teenage boys that are going to see that and not realize that this is a far end of the spectrum type of opinion, and they're vulnerable, and I don't know, it's I think this is why we're seeing this movement of the, I don't know, just of men having really wild, far reaching consequences of their opinions.
Yeah. So I mean, the one thing I will say is that a lot of so that sphere of stuff, that side of stuff, is going to be conservative. It's going to be, the Bible lays out how men and women should be, and everything else. And I'm not inclined to listen to something that's a couple thousand years old, thinking that life has not progressed in some ways. So I mean, now, does religion provide boundaries and codes and certain things like that? It does. And I think that men are very, very apt to have a code to live by. Right? And religion is kind of like unfortunately, religion, from my perspective, is a pretty zero-sum game. You're either right or you're wrong. You go to heaven or you go to hell, and that kind of tracks really well with the male psyche of rationale and things I can justify and yeses and nos, as opposed to, like, I've said it a couple times, when it comes to the progressive side of things, you have to be comfortable to play in the gray area of life sometimes, and it can get muggy. I mean, we say stuff about them. You know what? There's a bunch of little guys, and little's not the right term. Younger guys on the Democrat and progressive side that use the identifier conversation in the ways of, like, oh, well, a man can identify as a woman. I'm like, okay, well, no, you know what? That doesn't help either. When you're conflating femininity and masculinity as to it's whatever the fuck you want. And that doesn't help everything. So I mean, you go from having extreme defined lines to no lines at all, and we're right back to where can't the more amicable thing be somewhere in the middle on a basis of understanding? And again, that both sides of that pendulum are really big. Now, what I will say is there are a bunch of areas that men are lacking in right now. And it's not even purported in the ways that the Tates and all them do, where it's like almost everything they say is against women and against the fairness of men and women and our roles in society. But if you look at the guys that I've been talking about, as far as Galloway and Reeves and even Chris Willix and some of those other guys, they bring up just facts of men. And I think that's the one big thing I want to get to before all that is who defines masculinity? And you know what? Men define masculinity through our lived experiences that we share with each other. Masculinity is not defined by anybody other than a man. Masculinity is what is a man? What are the character traits and everything else that define that? And if you haven't lived a man's life, I don't think you can define what a man is or what we go through that makes us who we are innately different from women. That we watch, you and I watch a similar show where Wayne says, I don't tell a woman how she should be. He stays in his lane of, if I'm not a woman, I don't need to tell you what it is to be a woman. I don't need to explain femininity to you because you should know what that is. And it's not my place. Men define masculinity. We do. Now, the toxic masculinity thing, there's already been something massively published. It is not in a societal form of basic communication between normal people. It was an exaggeration of death row inmates that specifically were toxic in a masculine way of purposefully hurting and killing people. That was the definition of toxic masculinity. And then everybody that took philosophy found out about that. And now they've translated toxic masculinity to any form of something a guy does that they disapprove of. Now, that doesn't mean there's not toxic behavior on both
Right.
sides. Anybody can be toxic, doesn't have to be. But if it's toxic and it's a man, you're associating those things when the definition of toxic masculinity was violent murder by death row inmates in prison. That's what it was. And now it's run rampant to, well, this guy did something I didn't like and he's a guy, so it was toxically masculine. No, it's not. Stop misappropriating words, stop mixing definitions, and if you're uneducated about like that term, you should go find out what it really meant, because that's not what it means. And that word's been hijacked. And unfortunately it's been hijacked by women to encompass things they don't like in men to a certain toxic level, and then they've associated with that, and that's not what it is. And people across all spectrums have said that same thing about that definition. So it's a very widely corroborated thing that now most people know where it came from and how it's being used. So it's not quite to that extent, right? Uh, again, big thing with masculinity is that I take like ownership of that. I'm a man, I can define what it takes and what I've been through. And again, I don't sit here preaching to women about how you should be. That's not my job. I don't know what that is. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but don't tell me either. That's the one thing, is that I look for an evil fairness and what makes sense. How can you tell me what it's like to be a man, or what the man I should be, when you've never lived a day as a man? Make it make sense to me. You can say that, the preferences that you have, or I would like if these actions and stuff were done or whatever else, but I think we have a generation of women and certain people that are trying to tell men how to be men. And I don't think that's your job. It's men's job to tell men how to be. And that's where we're lacking, right? We have some of these younger guys where they're getting influenced one way or the other, and we don't have the right kind of men stepping up and helping.
But this is going both ways though, because you're saying that that women shouldn't be telling men how to be men.
Mm-mm.
But a lot of these influenced young men and boys are hearing from people like Andrew Wilson, and they're telling women how they should be.
I think it's a mistake.
Yeah.
I think it's a massive mistake,
Yeah.
And that's one of the main, again, and Andrew Wilson, it's going to be Bible first. Like, if the Bible didn't exist, he would have no essence as to what he should be or what he should do. But he's going to die on the hill of like, well, no, it's written that this is what I should be. And it's like, that's fine, but now we've reached an impasse. Now we've reached a point where if you're willing to die on that hill and I'm willing to die on this one, we're going to agree to disagree, and you're going to like believe and live your life to the way it is. But if you think that I'm going to let you sit on a panel and I'm going to say that there is no counter to how to be a man and a woman in the relationship dynamic than what you say, well, I'm going to say you're full of shit.
Yeah.
You know, like, and that's the big thing, right? Is that we've had these characters for a little while now that have filled that gap. I think that, you know, again, that kind of wave of feminism and empowerment and Me Too and everything else altered men, scared them into a passive thing. And these guys,
Define altered men.
what do you mean?
You said
Okay,
alt.
so this is going to be a basic one that Scott Galloway brings up a lot, is that women will complain about men not making the first move, not showing initiative, when about 80% of women still want men to be the initiators of contact, of relationships, of everything, right? And men will say that they're scared of women, that they don't want to, that they don't approach them anymore, that we don't do that. And it conveniently happened after Me Too. So the dynamic, and I'm not, big thing is that I'm not blaming women. I'm not saying it's their fault. It's something that we went through. But if we don't account for it and we don't have a way of talking about it, there's going to be no way through it. So you're going to have a bunch of women that aren't getting approached by men, a bunch of men that are terrified of women, and we're this gap of is getting worse and worse. We're worried about a population crisis and these lonely guys and these resentful women, and it's just it's the impasse is getting wider and wider. So the dynamic of men and women has changed in that way. And Scott Galloway, a lot of these guys, Reeves and everything else, say you need to be a man in all instances, regardless of anybody else, which means you're respectful, you're accountable, you're a provider, you do these things. You always offer. You are always a man, and then you always offer these things, but you're okay if it doesn't work out. You're okay if these people don't say yes. You're okay, like you need to be confident enough to walk up to somebody and strong enough to know that they might say no. And it's not the end of the world. That's the big thing. You still need to be men. We still need to do these things. We also need to be men in the ways of resilience and strength and understanding that we're not always going to get our way and we're not always going to get the stuff that we like. So it's again, go to the bar, have a drink, take a shot, see a girl, go talk, and see what happens. And you know what? Know that it might fail, and
So
that's okay.
see this as part of a bigger generational issue, though, because we're on screen so much, because we're not having people don't talk in person. They're texting and they're DMing, and like that our so much of our communication is faceless now. And I think that men not approaching women and women waiting for, you know, waiting for attention and not, wanting that man to approach them, that there, a lot of this, I think, is based in the fact that we just are not, I shouldn't say us, but that I think that there's a younger generation that is just scared of interaction in general. It's not just male, female. I think that it's a little bit of a, like the whole Me Too thing you're bringing up. I think that there is a grain of,
You can't say it's not substantial. It doesn't have a place.
but that was a pendulum swing the other way. There was a time in this country where flight attendants, their ass was like a pin cushion to getting pinched by men, and men were overtly sexualizing women. And there was this, like, in movies, I mean, I know that there's a huge, like, way bigger topic, but like the Little Mermaid original versus the remake, they took out the kiss the girl type of thing, because the original one was like the prince needs to just like kiss her, like he just needs to grab her and kiss her. And that whole thing of like not asking for consent or not discussing, or like this, that's a much bigger conversation. But I think that was the overcorrection that I think that you're referring to from the backlash of Me Too, was that men got scared of initiating physical contact with a woman for fear of it being misconstrued and all this stuff. But again, I think this is a bigger just lack of connection and not being able to do things. I've worked with people that are a generation below me that have a lot of trouble talking to people on the phone. They have a lot of
Yeah,
trouble.
I don't get that either. It's like an anxiety thing now. Oh my God, somebody's
Yeah,
calling.
no, but I get it though. I mean, I was a realtor. I made cold calls. I talked to people all the time. I was scared. I didn't like overcoming objection was one of the things that I struggled with. And I getting into the job I have now and having to call people and obviously, like, a lot of the calls that I'm making are warmer calls than I was making as a realtor cold calling. But even that, I've gotten to a point of not like what's the worst they're going to say is no. And then I hang up and I call someone else. I knew people in my 80s that they're like, meeting girls, it's a numbers game. Hit on every girl in the bar, someone's gonna say yes. And like, as much as I think that that's a real
I can
like
say the law of
dick
large numbers
move,
doesn't.
yeah. As much as I'm like, I don't like that. Yeah, I get it. It
They were
worked for
getting out there.
them.
They were getting out there, man. They were
They're getting
trying.
out there,
I don't know.
and a handful of those people are realtors now, or are business people that do person to
Front page
person
stuff.
type of things, and they have zero fear of talking to people. That's less and less of the generations that are following us. You and I are only 6 years apart, but there's plenty of people that I know that are in that early 30s range that are right on the cusp of, they still use the phone, but it's like not that often, and they'd much prefer. And then there's people like some of the people that we used to hang out with that are 10 years younger than me, that I don't even have their phone number. I only know them on social media, and these are people that I like see in real life all the time. And that to me is just foreign. And like, I know that I'm like the old man in this conversation, but I know I work with people that are, it's like, oh, you need to call this person, and they send them an email. It's like, no, don't email them. You email them as well, but like, call them.
You need to call
Make
it.
the call. Well, what am I going to say? Say whatever.
Whatever the fuck you were saying in that
Hi, my
email.
name is blah, blah, blah. I'm calling from blah, blah, blah. I'm calling about blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then wait for their response.
Have a conversation.
Yeah. Well, who do I talk to? Talk to someone.
Whoever picks up the phone.
Well, do you have a list of people I should call? No, that's your job.
Yeah, you need to do work.
Do a little bit of research.
forward.
And again, this is one of those jobs. The coordinator that I had earlier this year was of this generation that was just not really comfortable like having these face-to-face interactions, and his communication style was awkward sometimes. It was a little bit tone deaf. I had someone before that used capital letters all the time, or would bold things in emails, and it sounded really aggressive.
Sure.
And I think there's this we're losing. Huh?
Why are you screaming at me?
Well, yeah, and it came across as really aggressive, and I remember having these conversations like, hey, I know that you don't speak like this. Like, where's the? And he's like, well, I'm just trying to emphasize things, and I said, oh, I get that.
That's what I tell you before.
We're not texting. Like it's you need to read it and reread it. Read it in an angry voice. Read it in a scared voice. Like, does it track in all of those different scenarios?
I never send an email without at least reading it twice. The first time's just for grammar and punctuation. The second time is for like, okay, how can
I got emails from some of the people that have worked for me that are paragraph long sentences, just run on sentences. So it's
nobody
like
knows
stream
right, man. Our English under
my consciousness. And I'm looking at it going, did you just type this out and hit send? And part of me says, wow, how nice must it be
There's
just
no
to live that way
anymore, man.
Like, I don't give it a second thought. This is that communication breakdown. I really don't think that it's like all a backlash of Me Too, or that boys aren't masculine and they don't feel comfortable being a man. And I don't think it's about that.
Well,
I think that this is a symptom.
What I'm saying is you're also going against a lot of research that some of these guys have done, where they've talked to these guys about how they feel. And you know what? I also don't like I don't like blaming women for everything. Like, that's the big thing, right?
Yeah, I don't either.
We're responsible for men. We're responsible for how we feel. You cannot. It's one of the key characteristics of men, I believe, is being accountable. That's the biggest thing. Is that you're
okay.
I don't believe you can call yourself, a genuine masculine man if you're not accountable for what you do and for yourself. Now we can say that that should probably be the goal as a person in general, right?
Sure.
But when you look at, and I also like the word capable, that you're capable of things, and it's not just in the physical realm, but you're capable of empathy, you're capable of understanding, but you're also physically capable of doing things, and you're capable in the sense of intelligence and being an intellectual and things like that. I don't think that you can, I think one of the worst things someone could say about me is that I lack capability, that I can't do things. That would bother me. a lot of these guys, especially like the younger generation, and I don't know if it has to do with the parenting that they've been handed shit or haven't had to work for things, or just I think that we also keep parenting down or parenting away from the things that, we like. I think I can't remember where I heard it, but someone made the analogy of you're well off now. Like you as a person, you're making more money than your parents. You have your own house. You're doing all these things. You have retirement and all that kind of stuff, and you have this thing of you don't want your kids to go through the harsh things that you had to go through, right? You want a better and a happier life for your kids. And it's like,
Hmm.
did the hard moments not give you resiliency? Did it not give you things to overcome that made you better? I mean, how the growth lies in the hard. It doesn't lie in the easy. And now we're making these kids' lives too easy to where they don't have to be resilient. They don't have to grow. They don't have to do those things. And now it's pushing to when you're 18 to 21 and everything else where you should be independent and in college and doing those things. They don't have those lists of character traits anymore because we constantly parent away from the bad feelings and the hurt and everything else. When if you look at your own life, it was those moments that made you who you are, and you're robbing those things of the generation.
Well, we
Need
always want
they
we
need to
always want what
stuff.
we have.
Yeah, but you also need to stop parenting in fear. That's a huge thing, and thinking that kids are not resilient because you were, and we all were, and we all get better for it. I don't think that expression, and I'm probably gonna mess it up, but hard times make hard men. Easy times don't. And it's men need competition. We need hard things. We need stuff to overcome. And we get purpose in completing things and overcoming things. It should be that way. And it's just like I don't think that we have that and the sphere that I'm sometimes in, which is, again, that West LA, Westchester, extremely high end, kind of thing. The guys are different. I've tried to do some little league with them and stuff like that. And there's guys that are older than me in their 40s, some in their 50s. And sometimes they look at me for answers. And it's like, we're outside of the hierarchy of things, dude. Like you're a guy, you've lived longer than me. You have a kid. I don't have a kid. But when it comes to asserting themselves and fighting for something or protecting something or whatever, they lack it. They just don't have that spine or that piece of them, that I mean, again, and then or a kid gets hurt on the field, and all the moms run on the field. The guys are just standing around waiting for the kid to get up. You're fine. Get up. Let's go. The women run out, pick the kid up, carry the kid off the field, all this kind of shit, and the guys are just like standing there. And I'm like, you guys just made a mistake. I was like, you should have taken ownership of that situation. You should have done that. They should have stayed in their place in the stands where fans go. So there was four of us surrounding this kid who like twisted his ankle running through first base, which happens. We were letting it progress, work through your feelings and stuff. Okay, hey, now let's get up. And then
Yeah.
moms came running out of the stands, picked them up, carried them off the field, and it's like there was no boundary in that moment. None of those guys were like, "Hey, we got it. It's okay. Let us do it how we want to do it." And it just like the women overwhelmed the situation, did the thing, and I'm looking at them and I'm like, there was nothing positive that was made from this situation. We didn't grow here. You babied him.
Well,
There's nothing
this
positive
is
that came from
this is
that.
the thing. This is the thing with parenting too, though.
Men cannot be supported and just let go in male spaces. And it's just and mainly, but I
What do you
like right there,
elaborate on that?
right there, exactly the one that I'm talking about. There is no reason why those guys shouldn't have been respected in that moment to handle it the way they wanted to handle it. They didn't need help. Nobody needed help in that moment.
You think it's a lack of respect?
It's not in the traditional sense of like disrespect and whatever else. Just respect for the men and boy boundary of a boy got hurt, he's surrounded by guys. Give us the respect and the space to handle the way that we would like to. That's the only thing. They invaded that. Didn't matter that all of us were standing there. Didn't matter what we were doing. It wasn't what they wanted, what they thought we should be doing. And it interrupted the entire thing. The big thing is, and I try and say this from the other perspective too. If there was a girl and she got hurt or did whatever else, I wouldn't interfere with the women handling it the way they wanted to do. So that's the most pivotal thing I'll say is that Do I want these spaces for guys to be around boys and to do what we think is necessary? Yes. And I also wouldn't intrude the other way either. I'm going to give you the respect and the space to handle the things in the areas that you want to also, and that's where I want to make it very clear that I'm not being unfair. I'm being respectful of both ways and the different ways that they want to do things. Now, if you handle it and then you want to ask my opinion or my help, I'll give you my opinion and my help, but I'm not going to insert myself into that. That's not, it's a realm that doesn't involve me right away, that you should be able to take care, and I respect your space to handle it the way that you would like to. That's all. In that moment, they needed to relax. You need to let the guys, and the absolute thing they're going to say, you guys weren't helping, you weren't doing this. It's like, no, we were doing it our way. We were doing it the way. Do you think that we didn't care just because we didn't do it the way that you thought we should be doing it?
But do you think that that approach is applicable across the board? That every
I'm
because
I'm using a very,
this is a
using a
sports
very
analogy that you're
specific
making,
situation.
correct?
I'm using a very specific situation, and I mean it
This is
within the confines of that situation. So if you'd like to pose a different one, you can, but I'm using that specific one. I'm not using it as a carte blanche to everything.
what I'm asking about that specific situation. So that would that approach apply to every player on that team?
What do you mean?
So you're saying someone like you're talking about a little league team, right? Talking about someone getting hurt on the team during a game.
Yeah.
Is that rub some dirt on it approach? Does that apply to every kid on the team? Do you believe that for that team, every one of those kids should be treated the same in that same way of just let them walk it off, rub some dirt on it, or do you think that there's a need for a little bit of leeway that some kids on the team that's not the right approach for them?
It is, but again, I don't think you can cater. I don't think it's realistic to cater to every single individual the way that we want to all the time. I think there's going to be a generic and a generalized way of approaching things,
Okay.
and within that time, right? Let's say, I mean, the problem is all this happened so fast, and the moms that came out were so unwilling to like let us do the process that it instantly happened.
Okay.
Like, couldn't you just let the paint get a little bit more dry before you ran out here and said it's the wrong color? Like, just let it go a little bit. But it wasn't that. It was a kid screaming on the field, and I shit you not, there were four of us standing there. Four grown men are standing there, including his father. We're standing there because his dad was the coach, and we're just like, it wasn't that bad. Like, we know it's not that bad. So we've used our adult minds to say, this thing happened. He's having a big emotional reaction to it. Catering to this big emotional reaction is not going to be good.
Okay.
So we're letting them go through it. And now, look, now if it had progressed and everything else, sure, we would have went down. We would have grabbed him like, hey, we need to get up. We need to, go over here and do stuff. We didn't even have that chance. It never even got to that point. It was like it happened, and then like the lady that carried him off wasn't even his mom. So it was like all this stuff happened, right? And it was just like all you guys had to do was have a little bit of patience. That's all you had to do. And it was just like, the men aren't doing it right. Bam. And it was like, God, you did need to let it go a little bit. That's all.
So is this a problem?
I
Is
don't
this a
under-
problem that you see it like bleeding? Like where do you see this problem bleeding into other aspects of life? Like give me a more general example of how this particular situation that like applies to life. Where do you see this going wrong?
Tell me how, okay, firstly, that probably wasn't the first time it happened. That probably happens a lot.
Okay.
And especially in that sphere of life over there, because that's just one scenario. We don't have enough time for me to tell you all the other ones that I've seen in that progressive aspect of stuff on that side. It's not just the one thing. It's compounded with all that, and in the greater aspect, what did that kid learn in that scenario? What was positive in that thing?
They're
So
just
I'm,
gonna get taken care of when you start.
yeah, by mommy. And that any problem I have, they're going to come and do it, regardless of whether I'm actually hurt or not, because the kid went and played like kickball or soccer the next day. So you can say, again, the goal is not to constantly cater. It's not to constantly help, because do you get strong by not lifting weights? Do you get strong by not can you be resilient without ever going through adversity? Those aren't
Can
innate.
you?
They
Okay.
are no, they're not. You get strong by lifting shit that's heavier than what you can lift. You get resilient by going through things, realizing it's going to be okay, and growing from them, and these being capable of going through hard times. All these things that, that make a good person, and I would say a good man, are the tough things. And if we have a bunch of men that aren't resilient, which means they don't handle rejection very well, if they're not capable, meaning they can't really perform things the way they should without help or without mom, if I mean, if they're not strong, well, they're not going to defend you out in the world or defend themselves. So tell me what in this scenario, how that physically how that benefited his life in any way, knowing that that's not the first time, probably won't be the last time, and there's probably going to be a bunch of times in the between, and what kind of person that's going to create at the end of it. And I think that comes into um now you have a lot of these kids who are turning 18 that haven't faced these challenges, that haven't had to overcome things, whose dads might be present, but they're not actively being fathers and male role models. And it opens up the gap for guys like Tate and like those guys, the traditional guys, the guys that say, you want girls, get in better shape. And it's like, oh, well, yeah. Who doesn't like people that are more in shape, that are healthier, that are stronger, and stuff like. But again, and it's one of those things where we say, oh, I don't need Andrew Tate. I don't need Andrew Wilson. I don't, I've had a bunch of other male role models in my life that have taught me the right way. But if you're an 18-year-old who's only had the phone in their face the entire time and you're looking for somebody to give you purpose and to give you a trail of these things that you want that all these other men and people haven't been able to show you how to get, you're going to go. So I think the first failure is the father in the home. Why are you letting other men be the main influence in your son's life? That's a huge thing, because it's that as far as being a father, you're responsible and you're accountable, and you need to be capable of being the main male role model in your son's life. And so much so that he's comfortable with, like, one day if he's scrolling through Instagram and sees Andrew Tate or any of these guys, he goes, "Hey dad, what do you think about this guy saying?" It's like, dude, this guy's a thank you
Yeah.
thank you for telling me. Thank you for showing me. Let's talk about this. Well, but that's not happening. And you have to wonder about, either these boys don't have a guy in their lives that they can talk to like that, or they don't have a dad, that has the right relationship or whatever else. And we want to blame Tate and blame Wilson and blame that. And it's like, there's a dude somewhere who's responsible for this first. And we don't talk about that guy enough. And it's the dad. That's the one thing I would say is that, if we want better boys, we need to be better men. And that means being accountable for them, and helping them. If
Sure.
you don't want them to get in those hands, you need to give them something that keeps them out.
So with the rising just cost of living and the places that people choose to live, like us living in California, living in the South Bay, like living in expensive areas, you work more than you get to live in those areas. And to me, this comes back to just an issue with just like you're saying, people want their kids to have a better life than they had. And there's this pendulum swings of like, oh, my dad was so rough with me and he like I got in trouble all the time and I got, chastised, or I got, my dad would yell at me and stuff. So I'm not going to yell at my kids. And so you get and that swings the other way, like that you had a really hard childhood. You're going to have soft kids, and your soft kids are not going to achieve. And and because of that, their children are going to have a hard childhood. And it's this ping pong effect. I think that if you're out of the house, if let's just say it's hard to not be a 2-income family, but let's say that you want that. You want to be a single income. You want to be able to provide. You're out working all the time. It's hard to have those moments. It's almost impossible to spend the type of quality time with your children when you're working all the time just to pay for the house that you live in and pay for the lifestyle that you live in. Everything is more expensive. And the amount of time that people are working, especially when you're undereducated or underemployed to a certain extent, that you're working your ass off and you're still not making ends meet. I think that there's just the amount of FaceTime that fathers have with their children is less than it used to be. And that I think that the time that parents do, huh?
You think it's less now than it used to be?
Yeah.
So you think that men work more now than they did before?
It's not so much that men work more now. I think that wages are lower. They haven't kept up with cost of living.
I
And
was gonna say, yeah, the characterization of that wages are higher, but inflation and cost of living
correct.
has outpaced them. Yeah,
Right.
wages aren't lower;
So
they are.
not only are people not making enough money to get by, everything else in their life is getting more expensive. The stress, financial stress is, I think, the number one stressor for just people in general, not just men, but everyone. Financial insecurity is a huge thing. And that is going to cause you to be preoccupied with the bills that are coming in when you do have the chance to have that FaceTime with your kids. I don't see this as a problem with like fathers not being around. That is an issue, but I think that there's just the amount of time that we have with children is so slim now because they're on their tablet, they're doing extracurriculars, they're doing this. We're all so booked up that it's hard to get those moments in there.
So the one thing that I'm gonna push back on again is there's a little bit of accountability and responsibility for all this stuff, right?
Sure.
Tablets, I'm sorry, but cry to me later about it because the kid didn't go buy it. The kid didn't put it in their hands or anything like that. So own up as a parent. If you're going to give them a tablet, you cannot use it as an excuse. That's being accountable. You chose to do that. They have that. You let them do it.
That's such an easy thing for you to say, not being a fucking parent,
It's
dude.
also such an easy thing for you to cop out and say that that's what keeps you away from doing it. So I mean, it's fine. It's I can see it both ways. And there's a lot of people now that say any type of screen before 12 is detrimental to the development of the child too. So you'd have to conflate doing the right thing while also inhibiting what they're doing and
Sure.
making that conscious decision as a parent. And I'm not saying that parenting is easy, and I'm not saying that I have it figured out either. What I'm just saying is you're making a choice. And that if that choice has a consequence to it or an effect, you have to be responsible for both, you know. And I'm not saying that it's easy. I have limited, experience with it and whatever else, but I'm not gonna give the open door that parents can do whatever they want based on convenience sometimes, or that it might be a little bit difficult. Yeah, you know what? Nobody twisted your arm and made you have kids either. That was another conscious decision on your part. So
Sure.
if you had this tough life that took you away from all these things or whatever else, maybe you shouldn't have done that then. Or you're
Hmm.
adding to your life and you're adding to your stress. That kid didn't ask for all that stuff. The kid didn't ask for the tablet. So I mean, again, we you want to a lot of parents these days want to displace and parents have always kind of displaced because they don't want to be the problem. It's a choice that's made. I didn't have tablets growing up, and again, we lived through a whole world. You didn't have a tablet growing up. It's not a necessity, and parents think it is these days. I used to have crayons and a coloring book or some shit in restaurants, and now there's tablets with wings that flip out and screens in front of the entire time, and it's ridiculous. And you talk about antisocial stuff. The parents did that. You know what you had to do when you were a kid and you went out to dinner? You had to socialize with people at the table or mind your coloring book. But you know what? You and we are not antisocial. We're not worried about that stuff. But if you give a kid a screen who doesn't have to make eye contact with people at the table, who doesn't have to socialize with people at the table, what do you get? A bunch of antisocial kids. So you know what? I never blame the kids. The parents are responsible and able for everything that happens in that life. And I'm going to hold you guys accountable because you do. And you should hold yourselves accountable, And the big thing being, we men have always worked. We've always been out of the house, and it's always been more than women. It still is that way now. So I don't feel like men have any more or less time to be around their kids, and I don't think they don't need all of your time either. They never got it all to begin with. But the time that you do have needs to be significant. It needs to be important. And the other thing too is that in the time that Richard Reeves brings it up too, that in the time where your son is at school, he's likely to never have a male teacher until middle school or even high school sometimes. It's nothing but women in the vocation of teaching.
Hmm.
And all of the data and science points to if men are in the classroom, if men are present in boys' lives, we do better. It's massively purported that way. There's also a lot of boys that are misdiagnosed with ADHD and stuff like that because boys exude more physical symptoms of irritability and energy, whereas girls have just as much ADHD, but internalize it. So when you sit Billy next to Susie and Susie's sitting there all day long and Billy just can't sit still, it doesn't mean she doesn't have symptoms and it doesn't mean that he has over symptoms, but they exhibit it differently. And there's no men there to advocate for that boy to say, hey, let's take him outside. Let's run him. Let's play with him. Let's exhaust out his energy, bring him back in and see if he does better. And across the board, it helps. It helps when you take them out to exude the energy. Boys, our testosterone peaks when we're growing and everything, which just means we're souped up. You add in processed foods and sugar don't help either, you know. But the big thing is that boys growing up, hardly ever do we have a similar face or someone that knows exactly what we're going through up until high school sometimes. I think I saw my first male teacher in third grade, and then I didn't see another male teacher again until like a PE teacher or a science teacher in seventh grade. And then I didn't have another one until, you know, high school. So, I mean, it's just, it's one of, so, and at the end of the day, men and women, we can only understand and empathize and sympathize so much with the other sex as far as our brains are capable of doing so. Not to say that, like women are like overanalyzing boys and all that other kind of stuff, but to say that they directly understand what's going on, how we feel, all the things, they don't, but they totally understand Susie. They totally see that she's able to, and now Scott Galloway and Reeves even pointed out too, women are massively succeeding in the areas of education, college and in particular and everything.
Well, look at Dominguez. We were like
Oh,
outnumbered
he
five
was,
to one.
it was more than that. It was almost one of those things where like finding a guy was like finding Waldo every day. You'd have to
Yeah,
look for him through the sea of women, you know. But you know what? You know what's one of the highest things that Dominguez does? They're one of their biggest programs.
teaching.
So they're surrounded by them, you know, and it's just it's it makes complete sense to me.
It's funny
Where
because the majority of people that I know that have gotten teaching credentials from Dominguez have been men.
one
My
that, I
sphere.
know one that's a woman, but I don't
Yeah,
know.
most, I think five, maybe five or six out of the seven or eight that I've, like, people that I know personally have been men that have gotten teaching credentials from there.
Yeah. So I mean, you know, again, the data is there. Men are suffering. I think that Scott Galloway pointed out that if you go to a morgue and you find five people that died by suicide, four of them are men. And I know the statistic is women, I think as a whole, attempt it. They've always attempted it more, but they do it in softer ways, like pills and stuff like that. Men are like a gun. It's kind of over. There's really no coming back. So men are better at it, but it's also one of those things where when it comes to all of our veterans on the streets, when it, you know, the homelessness and everything else, men, you know, we might have at the far reaches of society, men are succeeding extremely well, right? And at the lower levels of society, men are hurting more too. So our pendulum swing is very wide for the most part.
I have such a hard time with that concept that men are suffering. Like I know that statistics lean
So
towards.
your feelings are overcoming the facts.
I'm not saying that what I feel is right. I have a hard time accepting that as the truth. I'll go with statistics. It's just hard to say, oh yeah, men are suffering. Men are suffering. It's like, we're
I don't like the suffering word. It's over dramatic and everything
it
else.
is.
Like just
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of words we use now are over dramatic. It's not that bad.
Yeah.
Now again, to say that men as a whole, when compared to their women counterparts, age, whatever else, are they succeeding as much? No, they're not. That's again, that's massively empirical data that say that women far outpace men in the ways of schooling and now better jobs as far as paying jobs and stuff like that. It's not
There's still a wage gap between
not
men and
no,
women though.
and I don't want to get into that, man, because every time the progressives talk about a wage gap, they don't take into account. They're talking about a specific sectors of specific things where it's not directly correlated to where men work longer hours, they're more apt to work overtime, they work the harder jobs. You know, like all the guys that window wash skyscrapers. They make pretty damn good money. Okay, he's washing a window 100 stories up from the ground. That's just something that women don't do. Or the guys that replace the light bulbs at top of the towers and stuff. That dude only has to do that 4 times a year to make very good money.
It's
But
just
he
hard. It's hard to reckon with, oh, women are doing better in education, but men still make more money.
and it's not It's also not by much anymore. Again, you have to define the parameters. The general scope of that statement doesn't apply anymore.
The general scope of that statement doesn't apply anymore.
If you do the research, which I encourage you to, if you look at like for like, it's not nearly it's not the 70 cents on the dollar that they say it is all the time. It's a lot closer than
Okay. I mean, looking at the chairmans and boards of companies, it's still
well,
predominantly
you're also you're
white men.
at the high end marginal spectrum. We're not talking about that.
But that's where decisions get made. That's where policy gets made. Company policy, company culture comes from the top. And so, okay, great. Education is being dominated by women. That's great. That's wonderful. Like I don't think there's anything wrong, inherently wrong with that. The the world is still being run by men,
Okay.
and this like, whole concept that like men aren't going to college as much. Okay, well there are jobs like window washing that pay a lot of money, and iron working, and construction. Like there are more jobs
Well, we
for
haven't taught it.
uneducated, huh?
We just talked about that last week, and those guys are not educated in those trades,
Right.
which is a
But
big thing.
there are more jobs for uneducated men than there are for uneducated women. So I think it tracks that women are more likely to go an education route rather than a vocation or a trade route. I don't know. I I understand the concept that outcomes for college age men are not the same as they are for college age women. But all in all, I think that this is a balancing of some sort. I think that there are cases for this being a bad thing. I think there's a lot of cases for it being a not bad thing.
Well, no, like I said, on a whole, it's not. I think fairness and equality is a paramount thing, right?
Right.
But the also the thing we got to talk about is the relationship paradigm of men being providers, and what happens when you have that guy who's taken the trade route, or just has a regular government job working for a city or something like that,
Hmm.
and you know, he wants to go out and find somebody, and he's surrounded by nothing but college educated women because it's not hard to get a bachelor's degree, honestly. It's the diploma now. It's a high school diploma. It's not that difficult. But you have a lot of these, and it's weird, right? Because egos and realities can get a little inflated sometimes. And because women have been like lifted up and empowered and protected and like all these kinds of things, it sometimes inflates a false sense of reality, expectations, and all that kind of stuff. So, what I'm going to say is that when it comes to Andrew Wilson, like on those dating podcasts and that Gaines guy and everything else, where they're surrounded by a bunch of girls, and they're usually in like Miami when it's just regular people walking by on the street, someone that's not going to give them any pushback or like reasonable debate, right? To hear what some of these women think is a reality from men, where they think the average guy makes like making $100,000 a year is like a standard for men to make when the when the median income for men is like $45,000 a year, and then but they still look at men to be providers, or they'll say, well, I expect him to make what I make or more, right? Which means the average man can't get, and these are average women. These aren't like, Fortune 500 company women or like top models. These are just women that have walked in off the street that think that men should be more as successful or more successful than them, otherwise they're not viable mates. And it doesn't bother me if a woman makes more money than me. It doesn't bother me at all, you know. But the case has been made on the right that men will date down. If a billionaire drives through Starbucks and there is a ridiculously attractive employee, he knows what she does and he doesn't care because we shop for different things
That's
when it
quite
comes.
the outlier, though. A billionaire is at
Well,
the
yeah,
ceiling.
okay, which is fine. You laid the outlier of the CEO just now, which is a completely marginal statement. So again, I'm just trying to make the point. Whereas with women, them dating down hardly ever happens. Their expectations of men and all the things that we should bring and all the things that we should do and all the things that we should have are always greater than our expectations of our women to have. So if we're going to argue that men and women should make the same, provide the same, well then we need to change that paradigm a little bit of we're both going to bring the same thing to the table. And I might, given the way the world works and my job and the things that I do, I might bring less. But are you with me because of these material things or because of the intangibles that I provide in the ways of being responsible, being honest, being loyal, and all the like the things that should be foundational to a partner and being a man, not just my paycheck. And they bring up that a lot too, is that when women date, they still have to look to us to provide things. Regardless of how progressive we get, men are still providers. And whether it's providing money, whether it's providing safety, whether it's providing the things that the other person lacks, right? I expect my women to provide the things that I don't, to have a softer hand than I do, to be more empathetic when I'm not, to be more understanding when I'm not, to be softer when I can't be, those fill in my gaps, which is fine. But we're having a lot of these guys that, get into the trades or do certain things and that we just agree that it's super hard to make it in some of these cities that we live in. And then how do guys meet the standards just to be able to talk to women? There's a lot of women that don't even want to entertain lower level men. And it's not the well-to-do women. It's the regular women and regular men. And it's really difficult right now. And again, this isn't even coming. This is aggressively coming from the right, where Tate and everything. All these women, they're delusional and they don't know all these things. And then there's guys, like Scott Galloway that says, "Hey, we may not have money, but offer what you can.
That's what I'm saying. Innovate.
Offer the date, offer the ride, offer the stuff. You offer what you can. And but I still think it's good that we now have some of these guys. We have Richard Reeds, we have Scott Galloway, we have Chris Willix, we have and to combat some of this other stuff. And I like that these guys are writing books and they're going around and talking to people and the Andrew Tate and all that. They're not going to write a book. Not that anyone's gonna, that's gonna care about or anything like that. And it's just, I like the space that we're in where now we have some people that are at least talking about it, that are combating some of these things.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's such a weird it's a difficult thing, because again, I think they said, you know, kind of the most one of the most dangerous things in the world is a secluded, antisocial man. Because you don't know, and they've looked it up over multiple societies and multiple parts of the timeline of humanity. Whenever you have a lot of single, antisocial men, nothing ever good comes from it. And I don't see how, and Richard Reeves also makes the thing of like helping out boys and helping out men. It's not a zero sum game. And it's not that we can't walk and chew gum at the same time. We can say that women still need help, and the minority groups still need help, and boys do too. And he advocates for more male jobs, higher paying jobs in education, because you have to say, okay, well, teaching jobs don't pay very well. And if we need men to be providers in order to get mates in the first place, we have to give them incentive to get into the field.
Is that not DEI? Paying men more to teach to get them into the profession? That's DEI.
Not if it lacks capability. If you're capable and you're the most qualified, sure. Not just based on the merit of you have a penis, you should do this. I don't believe in that.
Then what is this concept that you're bringing up of higher paying education jobs for men?
No, 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 no. That's not what I said. I said education jobs need to award more money so that it incentivizes men to get into it. Right now, right now the money is not enough for us to lose the jobs we have or stop going after the jobs we have to get into education. And the lack of men in education is having an effect on the boys that go through the education system because they don't have guys in education. And guys inherently, if we want a family and we want to provide and we want to do those things,
So
we need more money. So
I
we wouldn't go after, again, we're not going after education jobs because it's not conducive to us providing for a family and doing the stuff we need to do.
I understand what you're saying about there not being male role models, if you will, like in early education. But think of the most masculine, manly generation of in the last 100 years. Did they have any male teachers? Likely not. Where does that fall? Like if it wasn't if it wasn't a problem back then, why is it suddenly a problem now?
Those guys were out of the house and in war at 18,
Okay.
to where they were surrounded by nothing but men. So yeah, primitive years and whatever else, I guess. But as soon as they got out of those, and I don't, and I admittedly I don't know the landscape of there. I mean, I know that in colleges,
Yeah.
female professors were almost unheard of way back when too. It was men that educated everybody. At the high school level, I'm not totally sure. I would say probably at the elementary and middle school level, it's been a little bit more female oriented probably. But as you get into high school, as the wages increase in high school and in college, where men can now come back and be professors and make a living to support a household and stuff, you get more men involved. I think that teachers are underpaid across the board. I don't see how we can say that education is the most important thing and have them be as underpaid as they are.
I don't think anybody says that education is as important as it should be.
Yeah, well, I mean, they've always said, and the younger generation is, well, if it was that important, we would devote more money to it. Again, in California and us in general, right? We're in an $18 billion deficit all of a sudden, and you
It's a
can.
loss leader though. That's the problem is that it's not profitable. Education is not profitable.
It sounds
And
like it's
this is
right off.
why, huh?
Sounds like it's right offable. Then it's something. It's
Well, it's not profitable, and so we have a Department of Education that wants to abolish public schools so that we can profitize it. Like this is the direction that we're going. Is getting rid of public schools. Is getting rid of paying teachers even less to do more to have more kids in their class. That like that they're this is we don't put money towards roles that don't make money. It's that's the everything is a business now, and I think you're right. We should pay teachers more. We should incentivize more people to get into education so that we can make class sizes smaller, or we can provide more, keep class sizes the same, but we can have more attention to the kids. The ratio of adult to child can be better than it is. That's not going to happen now. Just unfortunately we're just not in the direction that this country's going in. It sucks, but yeah, I agree with you that higher paying jobs would make education more important. I'm still not sure that that would attract more men though. Maybe, but
I
personally I'm
mean,
just skeptical of that.
we'd have to look into the motivating factors of men to go after certain jobs. I mean, for me, you talked about I think your math teacher having a profound impact.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe you wanted to be a teacher. I loved history, man. I will talk to you about world history and wars and stuff all day long.
sure.
I'm making more money now doing what I do than I ever would be making as a high school history teacher over the long term for sure. I mean, it's just there's not a whole lot of upward movement in education. You can be 80 and still teaching, which means you don't get younger people and younger minds moving. It's a stagnant market of
Hmm.
people, And then again, now you're crowded by it's just there aren't many incentives for guys to get in to those vocations. And again, especially I don't know. I think the hard part is that most people are driven by greed, men probably a little bit more than most. And, men will believe definitely more in the capitalistic society than a socialism one, just because, again, we try and make what we can and do hard things and try and go make money and all that other kind of stuff because we have these things that we want. It's a family. I got to provide for my kids. I got to do these kinds of things. So if I see a job over there or I see a job over here where it's a private firm doing something else, I'm making twice as much, or I can feel really, really good about myself and go teach history to seventh graders, making half as much. What's going to provide for my family more? Whereas if that guy had that job and then as a second income, your wife could go out and teach,
Well,
the,
maybe it would be better for that man to be a teacher and to have the summers off and spend more time with his kids. Make a little bit less money, but have more of a retirement because he's part of a union.
well,
Maybe
that's
it's more important for that person not to be greedy and to set up their family for the future rather than going for the short term gains.
sure.
Would you agree?
Yeah, sure. But that leads into the bigger point of what I was thinking about. I don't think as a generation, us now, we don't know how to live with less,
Correct.
you know? And I remember my mom growing up, she had an 88 Honda Accord. It was new when she bought it and everything else, but she never the goal of that generation was to buy something, pay it off so I don't have a car payment anymore. They expected the car to go 200,000 miles, not cost them a lot of money and everything because then you have more money to use other places.
But we live in a debt economy now.
What's that?
We live in a debt economy now.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean,
15,
yeah,
15-year car loans that you'll never pay off.
yeah. See, it's stupid. See, so I think people aren't comfortable with living with less, and I'm guilty of it too. I want everything. I want everything that I want, and I would like it now while I'm young to enjoy it and all that. But it puts me in a bad place. Do I need it? No, I don't. you know? And there's a lot of people that'll, like for me, even if you go to Vaughn's or Ralph's and you try and buy organic versus, you know, store brand or something, it's sometimes it's double the price across the board of everything that you buy. Can you live with the standard one? Can you try and do like other things? Do we have to eat out as much as we do? There's a lot of these ways that we can save money to divert time and money into other areas, and we just don't. And the generations before us knew how to make what they had work so that they could do other things. And
Yeah.
I don't think that we're able to work with less. And like right now, if you know, if you went to Nissan or whatever else, you could find a car for less than $200 a month that you could lease. Is it going to have heated seats? Is it going to have a sunroof? Is it going to have, you know, all this? No, it's not. But what else could you? But that car that does is going to cost you $500 or $600 a month. What could you do with another $300 a month if you didn't think you needed all of that? You don't need all that stuff.
Correct.
That $300 a month could pay down the constant debt that you have. So
Because I've told you 1,000 times, when I first met my now wife, she was driving a car, an older Acura, like, you know, SUV with 150,000 miles on it. And I said, you know, you make good money. Like, why are you driving this car? And she goes, see this house we're in? I
yep,
own this
the
house.
house and the girls and
See
everything.
this, like the kids with they're in very expensive extracurricular stuff. Like, this car gets me from point A to point B. I don't give a shit how comfortable it is. It's a comfortable car, but it was cheap. It was very used when she bought it, and she's used it. And I, just like you said, like, I bought a brand new car and it has fucking cameras all the way around it, and it's got heated seats, and you know, like, it has all these bells and whistles because I thought that was important.
Yeah.
And then there's me with zero savings, not a homeowner, not moving my life forward at all. And yeah, this is a, and but this to me, and I'll speak on myself, this is a product of the bubble that is the South Bay. That it's all about what you have and who you know, and it's all about optics and this like nouveau riche, like, you know, people that have it, they get a little bit of money and they buy all the fancy things to look more at a higher status than they are. I'm tired of it. I'm so tired of it. And I think some of this masculinity stuff bleeds into that a little bit. We're trying to like bulk up and look like we're this manly man, you know, like, and it's optics. I'm all for being fit. I'm all for being masculine, all this stuff, but it's like, it just gets to a point. Everybody's, it's on, like you've said, we're on these spectrums, so there's a huge gap. There's a huge like divide between both sides of everything.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna argue that people shouldn't be in the gym because they absolutely should be. Now, again, and even masculinity, we're gonna have this conversation. And I think if we revisit it in 10 years and 15 years, it'll probably change and morph with time and as society grows and all that and all that. And I hope that some of these guys are able to pace this and hit the brakes a little bit, you know, to get us back to a middle point where it's not as,
Yeah,
you know, as left and right as it is. But, you know, I think that men, you know, men are natural competitors. You know, I think we've always done that. I don't think competition's a bad thing, you know, as long as, again, it's anything in moderation is fine. It's when you give it more space and more time that it becomes a problem. Any too much of anything will kill you. Too much water and you'll drown. I mean, it's like
sure.
too much of anything will go get you. And we say these things about like the stuff you brought up, living in the South Bay. Whatever. I have too, but we didn't have the money to show off like that. And we were, you know, we never really discussed money. We had what we had, and it wasn't prevalent. So I think some of that stuff is are the values you instill in your kids too. These are the things that are important in life. These are the things that people are gonna realistically think are important and everything else, but these are the things with real value. These are the things we have, these are the things we believe. And I think that's the same with guys and their sons, right? It's like, okay, these guys are saying these things, okay? This is what I believe. These are the things these are the things that are important, okay? You know, we don't need to entertain all of this undercutting of calling women stupid and saying they're the constant problem. I mean, it just sounds like bitching and complaining to me. And they have these same debates. I don't like, you know what? I have a real problem with people that specifically talk about one topic all the time and then bring in people. that obviously don't talk about this all the time and don't sit at home and look up all the research and everything. Like the gains, like he gets these just regular people that walk in off the street, and you have these guys like Andrew Wilson, who it doesn't look like he ever leaves his home, but he's there
Mm-hmm.
to look up all this stuff to more perpetuate his feelings that they're right and they're this. And he's talking to just some lady that walked off the sidewalk. And it's like, do you feel big because you know all this stuff that you propose to know versus someone that didn't even know what you were going to talk about when she walked in? I was like, it doesn't make you a big man. And it also doesn't make you right, by the way, to ambush people with a bunch of information that you've had the time to look into, you know. And the hard part is that again, they talk about femininity to women, and there's never a guy on the other side to be like, dude, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I think you need to take a step back. You need to get off that horse, or maybe we should go outside and we should talk about it. Like, I like that now we have guys that will throw back, because these guys in particular. I mean, firstly, I wouldn't say this stuff to Tate because that dude is a champion kickboxer. Everything else, like that dude can handle himself. But in the realm of talking and conversing and everything else, those guys, Andrew Wilson, there's a bunch of times where he's on Piers Morgan and there's a female on there. He goes, "Look, lady," like he dumbs it down constantly and makes it very well known that they're not to his level of the conversation or of humanity sometimes. And those guys are not going to care what women say, and they're not going to care what massive leftist progressive men say because they don't value them as men anyway. You need guys in the middle that can't be swayed by the massive rhetoric they're saying to say, dude, you're full of shit. Like, I'm sorry, man, but your perspective is full of shit. You haven't, it doesn't sound like you've gotten play from a whole lot of intelligent, intellectual women in your life that could stop you in your tracks of this train that you're on of thought. And it's like, yeah, none of these guys want to, step up and just say, like, you know what? I think your time is done. You've said your piece. This is what you're coming from, which is fine. If there are boys that want to listen to, what it's like to be just kind of a regular guy that doesn't want to belittle women, that doesn't think they're second class, that doesn't want to say a 3,000-year-old book is going to tell me how to live in the current world, then
Yeah.
come and take a listen over here. But those guys, the Galloways, they need to stand up to these dudes. They're the bullies on the yard, man. And sometimes you got to walk up to the bully and punch him in the face. And it's only going to be men that can check men. Women are not going to check those guys. And feminine leftist men are not going to check those guys. It's just not. It's not the way the field is laid out. You need to have more centrist guys that say, you're on the fringe, dude. What you're saying is way over there. Let's bring it back to the middle a little bit, or go home.
Yeah.
Stop having these massive things. It's like, you might have a couple of these facts that are right as a whole for the generation and dating and everything else, but that doesn't give you, again, ultimate authority over what it's like to be a man, and
Sure.
why anybody should be listening to you as if you do. You need to have counter conversation. And it's not to say that men like that are toxic. And it's not to say that, they're massive misogynists and everything, because they're just going to deflect. And everybody that follows them doesn't think they are anyway. So that kind of talk isn't going to skew the conversation. You need to have a more upfront, calm, and reasonable conversation with them to show that not all men are like that. And that we're not going to go way this way to combat them going way that way. You need to be that constant center that is not going to be shaken by guys like that. And
Sure.
I have hope that we finally have some guys that are leading with facts, not so much with feeling about what's actually happening, and providing solutions. Scott Galloway just came out with a book, and Richard Reeves came out with a really good one that I read, and it's all written really well and explains everything really well. And they go a long way to say we need to help boys, but we also need to help everybody else. And like, just because we say that, boys are kind of lagging in certain things doesn't mean that everybody else isn't. But if we have all this money and all this ability to help, we need to help. Because how does supporting men not help everybody else too? If we make better men, does that not help women? Do we not give them better mates? Do we not give them better partners if we're able to help them in the ways that they need help? Well, also, again, there's enough to go around of support and help to help everybody. And that's just basically what they say, is that we're starting to see a lack in this thing. And women are complaining that there's not a whole lot of good men, or that they don't talk and do those things. Well, then we need to help the guys. We need to help them. If the women are crying for help in ways of partnerships and stuff like that, well, we got to help them, you know, and thinking that men will just figure it out, or that, you know, men will be fine because they're men, you know, or the patriarchy's fine or all that other kind of stuff. That's not helping them. You know, they're just seeing more and more of that, and they're going to go the other way to say, oh, you know, get in shape, be a dick. All the girls like bad boys, and you know what? They all went that way. Now you have this like 1% of man that's just like running through all the women everywhere, and we don't want that either. You know, so I mean, it's just, you know, we need better form. We used to get masculinity from TV shows like My Wife and Kids and Roseanne. Like you used to have those old school dads that you'd be able to watch all the time. I don't think we don't have any of that stuff anymore. Even Bill Cosby before all the stuff, he would have some stuff that he would do with guys and
This is
everything.
a much bigger conversation, but that we do have that. We have shows like Modern Family. We had shows, you know, that we have. There's plenty of shows, but that it's moved away from that stereotypical masculine home improvement like Tim the Toolman Taylor. It's moved away from that, and it's a more modern interpretation of what it is, what it means to be a father, and what it means to be a husband and a provider. And you know, like where the I think we have far more modern contemporary examples of what men can be, not should be, but can be. You know, that there's plenty of examples in pop culture of very masculine men. And I would agree with you that we don't have that Dan Connor, Roseanne type of dad anymore. You know, the I think the All in the Family, you know, machismo, stubborn, racist, you know, Archie Bunker kind of guy, like just doesn't. That's not at the forefront anymore. You look at Al Bundy got a bad rap back in the day, but like in comparison to how all those other dads are, he was a guy that went to work, provided for his family. He didn't beat his wife. He wasn't a drunk. He was just kind of your average
Well,
dipshit kind of.
yeah, but what did he struggle with though? He struggled with relationships, man.
Okay,
Whole thing was that he couldn't get a girlfriend, and then he was a neurotic freak when he finally went on a date. That's the
sure,
one thing. It's like, sure, you're praising that. He also didn't have a family, by the way. He was a single guy forever on that show until he finally found someone that he could marry.
okay.
Wait, I'm sorry, I'm talking about the wrong guy. I thought
Who are
I
you
was
talking about?
thinking Al from Home Improvement.
No, Al Bundy.
I got my Al's mixed up. But that guy, okay. The interesting thing with Bundy and with what was his name on Roseanne?
Dan Connor.
Okay, there were same episodes of both of those
Yeah,
where I think they had. I think it was on Roseanne. It was her sister that got beat up by,
Jackie. Yeah, yeah. And he
and
goes and beats the
he
dude up.
grabbed his jacket and went out
Yeah.
and did it. You know, and I think
No,
Al,
Al Bundy did the same shit. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, but it was always like a look. We got this guy that can do the things we need him to do when we need him to do it, but we kind of got to deal with the eccentrics of his personality sometimes too. But it's also interesting to show that Al Bundy can also be, I don't know his name in Modern Family.
It's Phil Dunphy.
I saw a
Yeah.
lot of comparisons between those two guys, but I also saw
Yeah.
in a couple of those episodes of Modern Family,
Oh, you're talking about
Jay, right? Is his name Jay?
oh Jay. Oh, yeah, I'm talking about Phil. Yeah. Jay Pritchett is very, very similar. He's a yeah, he's an entrepreneur.
Good thing I'll say, the one good thing I'll say is that he actually showed moments of male vulnerability in that show
Yeah.
that Al Bundy never did.
Yeah.
So I mean, you can see the paradigm. He's
You know,
not his son-in-law by any means, but
Al Bundy did show vulnerability though. He showed it. There were plenty of very sentimental being there for Kelly, being there for like the son. Like they showed it in different ways. It wasn't as overt as they did with Jay in Modern Family, but they were there. Rewatching those, especially rewatching those shows now with the 2025 lens, it is a far different show. There's a lot of like objectable, like, you know, of the time type of shit. But overall, that show is pretty wholesome.
yeah.
And it's,
Aside,
and it was,
aside from his
and it,
antics and like his stuff that he says, some like fat women and everything. I mean, he's gonna have his things, but
yeah. But honestly, going back, like that show is very benign compared to the type of shit because that was like shock value almost at that point. That was like the far end of the spectrum, and now that's like that's real benign compared to the type of shit that's on now.
And but do you
Yeah,
think it should be though? Like when you go back and watch it, and again, you kind of try and watch open-mindedly, like for the first time,
yeah,
not for the boundaries and the things that are going to pop up about all that kind of stuff. But I find myself just like I went back and watched Home Improvement. I'll go back and watch that too and everything else, and it doesn't bother me. I'll see some things and I put in my head like that's from a different time. But you know what? He's a consistent guy. He's Al Bundy every day. You know what you're getting. He
yeah.
goes to work every day. Is he gonna bitch about it? Yeah, because he doesn't like his job. But he goes every single day, and like does that kind of stuff. And I see some of the guys now. Do you remember when 50 Shades of Grey came up? And that guy was the epitome of man for women, where he's massively anxious and he's like neurotic and he's a control freak because it sounds like he was abused when he was younger. And but all women wanted that treatment for some reason because he was also handsome and a billionaire, you
Yeah.
know. So they're willing to forego the emotional shit that this guy was doing because he was good looking and rich. And apparently, you know, he can lay it down like most people can. So I
But
mean that and
think about the he is a man that knows what he wants and takes control. He asks for consent, and he is a certain type of masculinity that I think at that time when that book came out, the movie came out, whatever, there was a deficiency.
okay.
That was a point where men too scared to talk to women, and even when they do talk to women, even when they do get relationships, they're too passive and they're not asking for what they want. They're not giving women that fantasy of like a man taking control and sweeping them off their feet. That's exactly what society needed at that point.
Okay.
And the fact that he's rich, the fact that he's good looking, I think is like cherry on top. But at the core of it, it's a persuasive man that knows what he wants, that is moving forward, that's lusting after a woman. Like that filled a void at that time. That's why I think that was the thing. But I totally understand what you mean.
Well, the other thing too being the void now is I can't remember what his name is. He's the guy that like writes and directs Yellowstone and like all that
Yeah,
kind of I can't but he's in it too. That guy has taken the masculinity thing back and that certain area with all the stuff that he's done. You know, these male guys that like Yellowstone, one of the big characters is have you watched it at all? Rip. Okay.
yeah,
The things that he's able to do and control with Beth, this wild, fiery, you know, whatever else, and he's like and then he'll like dumb it down. And a lot of women are like, oh, you know, Rip, the way that he is. You know that he also takes people and throws them into the mountain
it murders him. Yeah,
and murders them. Yeah.
yeah,
So like I get that you I get that you like this guy that's able to control this fiery woman and protect her to no end. Like Rip will kill you and everything else, but he will also kill you. So it's like you just the women's spectrum of again men. Well, I didn't see that. So no, he's still a killer. He's still a massive killer. He'll walk out in the middle and shoot somebody if he has to. He'll go dispose of their body over there because he knows that there's no court of law to do. Like that's a great guy. That's not toxic behavior, killing and murdering somebody and hiding the body. But you want the guy that can protect you, can control and control and manage your emotions and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, I hope you guys see some of the men that are in these things that we're idealizing in these specific again, I think we're cherry picking to think that you can create this guy that has all these good things, you know, or to think that a guy's going to be strong because he's a man. It's like, well, has he ever gotten in a fight ever? You don't know what he's going to do when he gets popped in the face once. But you think that because he's big and he can do this, he can assert himself and defend you. I think it's a very defining male moment the first time you get slapped or the first time you get punched to find out, are you going to stay in it or do you not like this? You know, not every man can play hockey. There is no way every man can play hockey because at some point or another, there's going to be another dude that holds you accountable for something that, or just comes after you. And what are you going to do? I don't think that, you know, you got to be a specific guy to play hockey and to do certain stuff like that. It's not going to be the ones that we think they are. And so, I mean, it's just the masculinity spectrum again. It's defined by men. It's not defined by women. And, but I think that We have the control of how we define it. And we definitely have control over how we create it and how we foster it. And if we have these male influences that we don't like in our society, we need to combat them then, and we can't let other people like that control the narrative. And especially if we have boys at home, because we're saying a lot of stuff about Tate and these guys. Well, they're on their phones and this. Well, why don't you be a dad? Why don't you be somebody that goes and tells them, hey, you shouldn't really be listening to these guys. They have this skewed perspective of things. Let's talk about, first, they acknowledge the areas where, they have some truth, but then let's talk about how they're extrapolating that truth to justify everything they're saying. And it's like, no, we got to change the narrative a little bit and stop blaming them. Stop blaming everybody. Take accountability for your kids, take accountability for your boys, and be the louder voice. Don't let these people, these influencers, influence your kids.
I think that's a great place to put a pin in it, Justin. You said it right there. Yeah, I like that. It was a good talk. We went longer than I thought we would.
We never go shorter than I thought we would.
It was a good talk, Justin. Looking forward to next week. I'm not sure what we're going to talk about, but it should be good.
Yeah.
In the meantime, good corona to you, sir.
Good corona to you too.